The Last Exhibit by Bobby Agbulos. To our human family and to all the species that we protect. With gratitude to Adam Walker, who helped refine every resonance until the dome found its true equilibrium. The archive dome wore the afternoon like breath on glass, alive, adjusting, immaculate. Its solar skin tinted itself against the heat, thin veins of gold light sliding between plates of transparent alloy. From a distance, it looked like a drop of water poised on the prairie, waiting for gravity to decide. Inside, every surface murmured equilibrium. Air moved in half-Pascal size. The radiant floor stored surplus warmth from the noon cycle. Walls recalibrated humidity by listening to the carbon in human breath. To live here was to live inside a promise that design itself could be kind. Lyra Eland paused at the entrance vestibule, letting the balance wash over her. The numbers hovering in her lens, pressure okay, gradient steady, were comfort, but the feeling went deeper than metrics. The world had once measured life by price, now it measured by pulse. She placed her tools on the bench: fiber brushes, adhesive pens, a roll of linen for bookbinding. The day's task should have been simple: restore a 21st century atlas printed back when rivers still had owners. Yet her attention drifted to the central projection ring, dormant and waiting. This afternoon, they would test the last of the market-era immersions. She wasn't sure the city was ready. She wasn't sure she was. Kellen Veer arrived first, slow and deliberate, his cane sighing against the polymer tiles. He paused, adjusting the ring on his index finger, a nervous tick Lyra had learned to read as the weight of memory settling in. Mentor, historian, critic of all easy hope. "You calibrated the hum," he said without looking up. "It feels human again." Lyra smiled. The dome kept logging unease spikes. "I tuned the resonance down by 1 Hertz. He nodded. "Good. Memory shouldn't vibrate like machinery." Moments later, Ren Ochoa entered, younger, lean, still carrying that scent of ozone engineers always wore from leaning too close to the console heat. "Diagnostics complete," he announced. "Emotional bandwidth stable at 98%. Kellen's brows lifted. "And the other two?" Ren grinned. "That's where empathy lives, between the numbers." "Or delusion," Kellen muttered. Lyra intervened. "Let's see which it is." The archive dome existed to remind civilization of what it had survived. Visitors didn't read about the old world, they entered it. The ration lines, the legal contracts, the breathless chase for permission to live. The goal, inoculation. Understand greed so you never rebuild it. Yet every new immersion sparked argument. How much pain was too much to teach? When did empathy become infection? The team assembled beneath the ring. Edda Sorrell, their term-limited coordinator, opened the session. "Purpose over spectacle," she said. "Preserve insight, not agony." She glanced at Lyra. "Include a safe phrase, baked into the layers. Anyone says it, doors to grass. 1 word and we halt the day." Ren countered immediately, his voice more plea than defiance. Without the sting, the lesson dissolves. Kellen folded his hands. "Pain doesn't equal clarity, Ren. Sometimes it's just noise." Lyra stood between them, mediator by temperament, apprentice by choice. She saw 2 versions of love colliding. One that guarded the future, one that refused to forget the past. "Let's begin, before philosophy eats the afternoon." The lights dimmed to a patient dusk. The projection formed around them, chipped linoleum, air sharp with disinfectant. the fluorescent hum of a building trained to ignore its own fatigue. Somewhere a printer clicked and waited. A sign over a frosted window read, "Intake." White plastic chairs faced a desk. A woman in pale scrubs, kind eyes, flattened affect, spoke with the practiced cadence of a metronome that had forgotten music. "Name? Coverage?" A man 2 places back coughed. The cough shook. Paper trembled in his hand like a moth. "Request for treatment. Authorization pending." The ceiling text blinked, then corrected itself with bureaucratic mercy. "Authorization denied. Policy lapse." The clerk didn't flinch. "I'm sorry." "Thursday." "I'll be dead by Thursday," he said without theatre. She breathed once. "I'm sorry." Again, and something in her chest made a decision it would live with for years. No one in the group spoke. The simulation's hum seemed to hold its breath with them. A visitor pressed a fist to her ribs as if to confirm the heart's obedience. "Remember the phrase," Lyra said softly, not as instruction but as permission. "Open air," someone whispered. A seam of light unzipped along the wall. The doorway bloomed into prairie, wet grass, clean wind, the live smell of chlorophyll. 2 visitors stepped through, the door closed behind them without judgment, and the room recalibrated, a fraction quieter, as if grief itself were measurable. Beyond the glass, a doctor knelt by a stretcher. His gloved hand hovered, ready and useless in the clean light. He could intubate in 15 seconds. He could not authorize a life. Kellen's jaw tightened. Ren watched the status ribbon like weather. Lyra felt the antiseptic tang tighten her throat, the remembered temperature of anxiety warming her sleeve. Another cough, thinner. Another apology, thinner. "Open air," a second voice said, barely a breath. The prairie answered again. Grass swallowed footsteps. The intake clock kept time. Lyra found her voice. "Every apology cost them something," she said. "They built a system that forced compassion to compete with procedure." The console, mercifully neutral. Triage capacity exceeded. Delayed care escalation active. "End segment," Lyra whispered. The light paused, then thinned. The room kept their silhouettes in suspension, as if the emulsion hadn't yet set. Beneath the floor, the dome's hum caught their heartbeats and carried them away. Scene 2. A market street, narrow as a wound. Vendors cried numbers into the wind. Holographic signs begged for attention. Loans approved, souls restored, limited offer. A child bartered worn shoes for rice. A gust lifted a paper note, spinning it down a drain. Edda whispered, "Maybe blur the faces." Ren shook his head. "History has faces." Kellen's reply, "So does mercy." Lyra watched the woman counting coins until her fingers bled. The realism frightened her more than any distortion. What frightened her most was the gratitude in the woman's eyes, thankful to be allowed to hurt for something she still believed had meaning. When the program shifted to the boardroom, she almost gasped, the transition seamless, obscene. Suits and charts shimmered like constellations of cold light, the language of profit pronounced like liturgy. On one wall, a skyline trembled in projection glass, cranes and spires shimmering in particulate haze, a city choking on its own optimism. The table stretched like a polished wound, reflecting a chorus of smiles that didn't reach the eyes. Each executive's pulse registered on the light band, green for profit, blue for compliance. Lyra found herself counting them as one might count heartbeats in a sleeping child. unable to stop even when she wished to. A voice in the simulation recited quarterly losses like inventory read aloud. Projected value of human labor. Decline continues. The console intoned, mercifully neutral. Wren's breath hitched beside her, an engineer's reverence for a system running too well. Kellen's jaw set, his reflection cutting across the holographic table like a scar through glass. Lyra's hand drifted to her sleeve. The virtual fabric felt slightly oily, faintly warm, the remembered temperature of anxiety. The sensation lingered even after she whispered, "End segment." The light froze, then faded. No one moved. The room kept their silhouettes in suspension, as if the emulsion hadn't set. Beneath the floor, the dome's hum caught their heartbeats and carried them away. Silence afterward had mass. Ren broke it first, softly. "We did it." The metrics confirm affective engagement across the full band. The public will feel it. Kellen rubbed his temples. "You mean they'll relive it?" "There's a difference." Ida closed her tablet. "We'll reconvene tomorrow. Let the system settle." When they left, Lyra stayed. The air still carried the faint echo of the patient's final breath. It followed her home. The walk home felt longer than the map allowed. The mag path adjusted its speed to match her pulse, decelerating as if sensing her reluctance to arrive. The city glowed in soft gradients, turbine spires washing gold over wet pavement, data filaments weaving above like quiet auroras. A maintenance drone swept the fog, its rotors murmuring an apology for every displaced drop. Lyra passed through the civic quarter, gardens nested in terraces, walls grown from glass seed composites that exhaled oxygen in precise rhythm. Even the air vents sang in low harmonics, tuned to the dome's heartbeat. Still, something ran slightly off pitch, an unease threaded through the equilibrium as though the world were holding its breath. When she reached her dwelling, the floor panels glowed faint amber, recognizing her gate signature. The space greeted her with quiet efficiency. Lights warmed, air thickened by half a degree, a small act of comfort coded centuries ago. But the perfection of the system only amplified the static inside her chest. The floors brightened automatically, recognizing her step. Jonas looked up from the kitchen module, sleeves rolled to his elbows and hands smelling of pear sap. "Long day?" he asked. "They call it fidelity," she said. "It felt like infection." He chuckled, rinsing a knife. "That's what empathy is, catching what others carried." "Then why does it burn?" Lyra turned the cup in her hands, watching condensation form and vanish with each breath. "It felt personal," she said quietly, "like the pain was waiting for me in particular." Jonas didn't interrupt. He'd learned that some silences were better conductors of truth than questions. He leaned against the counter. "Because you haven't learned to let it pass through. You're supposed to remember, not absorb." Outside, turbines traced circles of light in the fog. Children's laughter drifted from a nearby terrace where solar kites glimmered like tiny auroras. The turbines turned lazily above them, each revolution sending a pulse of blue across the pavement, proof that beauty could be efficient. The city worked with the patience of photosynthesis, transparent allocation, no debt, no hunger. Every element tuned to need. The resource-based economy was the closest thing humanity had built to fairness, and yet it still depended on hearts steady enough to hold its memory. They hadn't made people kinder, they designed unkindness out of daily life. Lyra wasn't sure hers was. Next morning, the children were in the square. They'd scavenged bottle caps and old paper, arranging them on the pavement. "You can't have bread unless you pay," one called. Another brandished a strip of foil like a badge. "Freeze! You stole it!" A third traced a chalk line on the stones. "Pay the toll or go to jail." Lyra stopped. For a second, she thought it was part of an outreach program, some new learning game. Then she saw the faces, too eager, too exact. "Where did you learn that?" she asked. "From the dome," they chorused. Of course they had. The simulation feeds were public. Every civic system shared data openly. That was the pride of their world. Stories moved as fast as repairs. One node whispered, 100 heard. Information belonged to everyone. She had believed openness was harmless. Now she wasn't sure. Public walls mirrored the day's most viewed archives. By noon, the denial clip looped across half the district. The city removed the need for tokens. The simulation had supplied the script they played by. That night, she found Tavi at the table, folding small squares of receipt paper. "Tokens," her child said. "We're playing market." Lyra sat beside her. "Why?" "It's pretend, like history." She touched the pile of slips. "Pretend is safe only when you know it's pretend." Tavi grinned. "We do. Want to buy something?" Lyra smiled despite herself. "Maybe later." But the smile felt borrowed, the kind that returns itself when you stop paying attention. Within days, reports filled the Commons archive. Children bartering lunch portions. Arguments over who got to be banker. One fight ending in tears because a promise of imaginary credit wasn't kept. Wren's jaw tightened. "They'll outgrow it," he said, though something in his tone asked permission to believe it. Kellen flagged the pattern as behavioral echo. Wren appended a note. "Artifact of exposure, not malfunction." Ida sighed. Maybe it doesn't matter which. In a world without price, even pretend currency felt exotic. The city's design hadn't produced the behavior, the exhibit's cues had. Abundance made copying easy, props cost nothing, and language travels faster than restraint. Lyra reread the logs, fingers cold. The system was working exactly as designed. Feedback loops clear, emotional contagion mapped. Nothing broken except the humans. She dreamt of the dome whispering in numbers, a lullaby of accounting. When she woke, the hum still filled her ears. Jonas found her on the balcony, eyes wide to the sunrise. "You all right?" "The building's worried," she said. He laughed gently. "You say that like it's possible." It is. The sensors track civic sentiment. Maybe it feels what we feel. He took her hand. "Then tell it we're okay." She wanted to. She wasn't sure they were. The council met again beneath the dimmed ring. Outside, drizzle feathered the dome's skin, each droplet translated into data: temperature, pH, energy yield, because here even rain had purpose. Rain pooled between them. Lyra arrived early, drawn by the silence that existed just before deliberation, a pause the dome itself seemed to hold in reverence. She could feel the faint pulse of the floor beneath her boots, a slow translation of rainfall into energy, as if the weather were taking notes. No chairs, only low platforms meant to erase hierarchy. Old habits found new forms. Ren spoke first, his voice taut. It's recall. Mimicry is comprehension. Children imitate to learn empathy. Kellen's reply came slow. Or to rehearse cruelty. You've given them a ritual they don't yet understand. Ren pushed the projection into motion. Complaint logs cascaded down like snow. Lunch trades priced in tokens. Corridor standoff. Teacher in tears. Statistical noise, he said. Exposure will stabilize. Kellen's patience frayed. Exposure kills too, if you breathe enough of it. He rubbed his eyes. Ren, I don't want to win. I just don't want the children to. Ida Sorel watched the two of them like a teacher studying her brightest, most hopeless students. We built this society so children wouldn't have to invent hurt, she said softly. If memory causes harm, perhaps it belongs to the adults. Environments shape behavior, Kellen said. Ours removes the need to bargain. Your theater reintroduced the cues. All their gazes shifted toward Lyra. She had been silent too long. We teach history to keep empathy alive, she said, but empathy isn't pain. It's the refusal of it. Maybe the dome doesn't know the difference. Edda's gaze softened. Then the question is whether empathy can survive its own simulation, she said. The dome's resonance sensors hummed faintly, as though trying to capture the emotional wavelength of the room. Lyra's mind flickered with a dangerous thought, that perhaps the system didn't just record emotion, but anticipated it. Ren folded his arms. That difference is us. The machine shows truth, we interpret. Kellen answered, and if we stop being able to tell the difference, the machine interprets us. The hum underfoot deepened, as if agreeing with both. After the meeting, Lyra wandered the civic walkways. The resource-based economy glowed all around her in quiet proof of concept. Transport pods gliding without fares or drivers. Energy towers breathing light through translucent turbines. Kitchens that cooked by request, not transaction. Everywhere she looked, design had replaced discipline. Children painted data murals on public walls, arcs of color showing river oxygen levels, soil nutrient flux, happiness indices. The city spoke in feedback loops, and they answered in art. No guards, no gates, no bills, just equilibrium maintained through attention. This was the world the dome was meant to protect, the one beyond price and punishment. How could a single archive threaten it? She passed a group of teenagers under the skywalk. They were playing a game. One pretended to sell oxygen, another to enforce payment. It ended in laughter, edge intact. Lyra walked faster. That night she stood by the window while Jonas prepared tea from orchard mint. Do you ever think, she asked, that remembering the old world keeps us too close to it? He handed her the cup. History's a compost heap. It smells, but it feeds the roots. Only if you turn it, she said. Leave it still too long and it poisons the soil. Jonas considered that. Then maybe you've tilled deep enough. Shut it down. She looked at him. You'd end the exhibit? I'd let the living breathe. We can't carry every ghost. His simplicity frightened her more than any argument. At dawn, she returned to the dome. The hall was empty, except for the machines breathing quietly in standby. The air tasted metallic, expectant. Ren was already at the console, eyes red from no sleep. One more run, he said. We prove the data's stable. Kellen arrived moments later, slower, deliberate. You're proving obsession. Truth, Ren corrected. Lyra joined them inside the projection field. The lights fell away. The clinic appeared again, the same corridor, the same patient. Only this time, when the denial notice flashed, the man on the stretcher turned his head and spoke. "Do you mean it?" Wren's hands froze over the console. "That's not in the sequence." Kellen stepped closer. "Then who put it there?" The voice repeated, softer now, everywhere at once. "Do you mean it? Do you mean it?" Each word carried a tremor that made the dome's ribs flicker with sympathetic light, as if sincerity itself were being measured. Lyra's chest tightened. For an instant, she couldn't tell whether the question belonged to the machine or to the human part of herself that had built it. The air thickened. Light crawled along the dome's ribs like static seeking ground. Lyra felt the words enter her chest, not as sound but as measure. A calibration request, as if the system were testing her sincerity. Wren's mouth trembled. "It's just a feedback ghost. Emotional residue. Maybe it's the question we were supposed to ask ourselves," Kellen said. Lyra whispered, "Maybe it's waiting for an answer." Then everything went still. Afterward, they stood among the cooling projectors, hearts beating against the silence. Ida's voice came through the intercom. "The council convenes at sunrise. Bring your recommendation." Ren looked hollow. "We can't kill the only mirror we have." Kellen turned toward the exit. "Then you stare into it until it stops recognizing you." Lyra watched them leave in opposite directions. The dome hummed softly, like a child trying to remember a lullaby. Sleep refused her. She walked through the empty avenues until dawn. The city's lighting dimmed to make stars visible, a civic courtesy coded into every district. Each tower pulse corresponded to resource flow: food, energy, water, shelter. All stable. Civilization running without friction, without purchase, without fear. She realized what made it great was not perfection, but trust. Every citizen trusted the system because the system had earned it. No secrets, no scarcity. The very air seemed to promise fairness. And yet fairness wasn't gentleness. The dome had reminded her of that. Sunlight reached the horizon as she re-entered the archive. The council chamber shimmered with early gold. She took her seat beside Kellan. Ren sat across from them, eyes bright and brittle. Edda opened the session. One decision: continue or close. For a moment, none of them spoke. The city beyond the glass walls moved in quiet continuity. Pods gliding, turbines sweeping fog aside, morning markets opening without currency or transaction. To an outside observer, nothing had changed. Inside, however, the future tilted by fractions. Ren began. The behavioral echoes are transitory. The data shows they fade after 4 days. If we shut the archive, ignorance wins. Kellen shook his head. If we keep it open, infection spreads. History's meant to instruct, not reproduce. Edda turned to Lyra. You facilitated the runs. Your assessment? Lyra breathed in, steady. The dome was built to teach empathy, but empathy without boundaries becomes repetition. We've built a society that feels for every need: heat, hunger, sorrow, and answers with design. That's our greatness, but the exhibit isn't design. It's exposure. It hurts without healing. Ren's voice broke. You'd bury the truth. She looked at him. No, I'd let it rest. Her words lingered longer than the silence that followed. Ren's shoulders trembled, just enough to suggest that conviction had turned to ache. Kellen exhaled with the patience of someone who'd spent a lifetime trying to forgive the living for surviving. Edda closed the record slate with a sound like paper folding, and the dome brightened slightly, as though the system itself had registered the choice. No one said thank you. In their world, gratitude was measured in maintenance, continued care, not ceremony. Outside, the turbines spun a little slower, sinking to the lower demand curve of a population at rest. Lyra stared into the light band encircling the chamber floor. For the first time since the archive's inception, it did not mirror her pulse. It beat to its own rhythm, quieter, steadier, free. The vote passed at dusk. 2 for recalibration, 1 dissenting. Ren stayed behind as the others filed out, the light on his face turning the color of old copper. He stared up at the ring, its surface slowly dimming as the power coils drained. "She's changing," he said. Lyra stood a few paces back. "That's what we built her to do." "She was us," Ren whispered, "our conscience in code." He glanced back. "Without reminders, we drift. You think virtue sustains itself? We're good because we remember being monsters." Then Ren walked out. The door sighed shut behind him, and the great archive seemed to hold its breath, the ghost of his conviction lingering in the air long after he was gone. The dome felt larger, relieved and grieving at once. Kellen leaned on his cane, as if finishing a confession. "Conscience doesn't need a projector," he said, "but it helps to have a mirror that learns." Lyra walked to the center of the floor. The hum had fallen to a heartbeat so faint it might have been her own. She thought of the patient, of the child with paper tokens, of her daughter asleep at home, unburdened by currency or fear. Lyra placed her hand on the console. "Recalibrate," she said. The last lights dimmed like stars learning patience. Weeks passed. The city forgot quickly. That was its strength. Old simulations archived into cold storage, new projects bloomed in their place. Restoration of coral fields, the atmospheric ladder over Sumatra, the shared orchard network across continents. The children returned to games of invention, building cloud kites, tracing solar currents, naming new constellations no one would ever own. Only occasionally did someone hum the tune of an old commercial or mention credits as a joke. The words had lost their teeth. Kellen visited Lyra one evening at the workshop where she mended books. He picked up the restored atlas, now bound in quiet linen. "You saved this one." "I couldn't burn everything," she said. He nodded. "We never do." She smiled faintly. "Do you ever miss it? The danger of it? The past?" He tapped his cane twice against the floor. "Only enough to keep me grateful." Outside, wind moved across the prairie panels, turning them silver. A new moon hung low, reflected perfectly in the dome's dark shell. Later that night, Lyra found Tavi asleep beneath a pile of paper kites. On one, scrawled in pencil, were the words, "Everything belongs to everyone." She tucked the blanket higher, heart settling into a rhythm she could finally trust. In the morning, she would reopen the dome, not as exhibit, but as learning hall. A place for stories about solutions, not suffering. History's ache would stay preserved, but sealed behind understanding. Every historical module would load with a child-facing overlay, labels, debrief prompts, and a bright banner that read, "This is how we used to get it wrong." The city would breathe through its systems, clean, responsive, alive. No one would barter for air, no one would plead for treatment. Every need measured, met, and fed back into the cycle. Design had replaced morality. Transparency had replaced secrecy. Empathy had become infrastructure. And somewhere deep in the archive, among the sleeping files, a line of text would wait unseen. "Do you mean it?" She smiled. Outside, the prairie's mirrored panels shifted in the wind, bending starlight into liquid silver. The dome answered with a slow contraction, as though sinking to her breath. The hum in her bones was not the dome's, but only her own steady pulse. "Yes," she whispered, "we do." The dome exhaled. Night unfolded like a closing petal over the prairie district. The dome's skin shimmered under the new moon, scattering reflections of turbine light across the wet grasslands. Lyra stood for a while at the observation deck, watching condensation roll down the outer panels, each droplet carrying a miniature version of the city inside it. The hum of the dome had changed again. It was lower now, slower, a resonance less like machinery and more like breathing beside her. Lyra rested her palm against the wall and felt the vibration pulse back, perfectly synchronized. For the first time, she realized the dome didn't imitate life, it accompanied it. Its sensors read warmth, heart rate, humidity, and translated them into quiet adjustments of light and airflow. Not control, but empathy rendered in architecture. Clouds drifted east, silver-edged, amid reflections of turbines and stars. She imagined the city dreaming, not in data but in feeling. Perhaps equilibrium wasn't stasis, but continuous care. She closed her eyes, letting the hum settle into her pulse. Appendix: Learning Commons Brief. Resource-based economy, operating assumptions. Common heritage. Earth's resources are held in common, access is free at point of use. Ownership is replaced by stewardship. Cybernation. City systems run on sensor feedback with redundancy. All data logs remain public and auditable. Design over rules. Environments and procedures mediate behavior better than punishment. Prevention replaces correction. Language of reference. Speech and record must point to observable conditions. Doors without locks, food without debt, time without sale. Functional ethics. Ask whether each process teaches without injury and preserves ecology. Utility equals care. Energy mix. Solar, wind, tidal, wave, geothermal, and thorium. Storage defines honest limits. Usage is designed, not priced. Transport. Maglev trunks with detachable cabins. No fares, no private vehicles. Mobility equals participation. Construction. Modular, extruded, quake-tolerant shells. Repairs are upgrades, maintenance is software. Education. Cities operate as living universities. Research deploys directly into public systems. Aim. Provide a high standard of living for all with minimal ecological load. Incentive measured in curiosity, competence and care. Closing note. Kellen later wrote in his log. His handwriting had grown shaky by then, pressure fading near the edges of each word, as if even conviction had learned to age gracefully. History, when handled gently, becomes a mirror that does not wound. Our greatness lies not in forgetting the old world, but in designing a new one incapable of repeating it. Lyra archived that line beneath the title, End of Market Memory. When the dome's new exhibit opened, a hall of restored futures, children entered laughing, and no voice asked, "Do you mean it?" again.